All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. Today, we are talking about how can your nonprofit prepare for the future of philanthropy. I'm going to give everyone just about a minute to trickle in. But while we're getting everyone in the room, I would love for you all to light up that chat box and let us know what you are looking forward to learning in today's session. All right, well, as everyone starts to think about the ideas that they want to share and they want to learn about today, I'm going to go ahead and just go over a few housekeeping things. But first, I would love to introduce myself. My name is Carrie Evans. I am the Senior Nonprofits Partnerships Manager here over at the Giving Block. I will be today's moderator. And we encourage you to drop in some questions as we go so the panelists can answer them. We're also going to have some time at the end of the session, so keep those coming. As you have questions, load them into the Q&A. This webinar is being recorded, so we encourage you to share this with your team and any nonprofit friends that you might have in the space that'll find this helpful. You'll find this in your inbox in the next couple of days. So let's go ahead and dive in. Today, we are joined by our incredible partners at Omatic and Blackbaud. We are super appreciative of your partnership and so excited to have this discussion. It is much needed for all of our nonprofit friends out there. So let's go ahead and get started with introductions. I'm going to go ahead and get started with Bailey.
Perfect. That sounds great. Super excited for this webinar today. My name is Bailey, and I am our integrations manager at the Giving Block. So I work with our amazing partners like Blackbaud and Omatic on really making sure that for our nonprofits, all of their tech is working together. So a little bit about the Giving Block for those of you who might not know. Here at the Giving Block, we work with nonprofits to help them fundraise non-cash assets more effectively, really with the goal of enhancing your fundraising outcomes. So our product suite includes giving crypto, stock, cards, and donor advised funds, with the goal of really helping nonprofits increase the percentage of your donors that are giving non-cash assets and really increase your average gift size. So super excited about this webinar today to talk a little bit more about the trends that we see around giving and all of the great tech that is out there to help you tap into these donors. So I will pass it off to Mac next.
Thank you, Bailey. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Mac Russell. I'm the Director of Partnerships and National Accounts at Omatic. A little bit about Omatic for those of you who don't know, because I need to follow that wonderful overview by Bailey. Omatic really serves as a data management and integration solution for nonprofits. We are purpose-built for nonprofit data integration and have been around for 21 years. We're proud to say that we're 21-year standing partners to Blackbaud, and we're also newly partners to the Giving Block. Excited to be having this conversation with you all today, and look forward to sharing some of our insights. I'll give it off to Carrie.
Great, thanks. And thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here today too. So my name is Carrie. I'm a senior product manager on the data intelligence team here at Blackbaud. And that means that I get the opportunity to work really closely with our engineers, our data scientists, UX designers, but I also get to work really closely with our customers and with prospect development professionals, frontline fundraisers, and I'm always thinking about what I'm learning and hearing from each group and trying to bridge the gap to build solutions that serve fundraisers' needs. Before joining Blackbaud, I worked at a communication analytics company that used machine learning to help speakers understand how they come across to different audiences. So I've been working in the AI machine learning space for a little while. But I'm really excited to join the conversation today. Thanks.
Fantastic. All right, well, we have a wealth of knowledge to share with you all today. And I'm going to start let's start with the basics. So nonprofits are always eager to capture new donors, especially as a way of future-proofing. People are thinking about the great wealth transfer. So Bailey, I would love for you to chat a little bit about what factors are motivating these new donors to give to a nonprofit.
I think this is a great question, especially before we even talk about any of the trends or texts that are out there. What really is even motivating new donors to give in the first place to a nonprofit? So when I was thinking about this, there was really kind of 4 areas that came to mind of these top motivation factors that we see, especially here at the Giving Block, when it comes to trends that really motivate a new donor to give. And those are mission, impact, ease, and then tax benefits, of course. So when it comes to your mission, a huge part of bringing in new donors is that they really feel either a personal connection to your mission or they have a belief in your cause. So they're motivated to really support your organization when they strongly believe in the impact you're making. And that's why it's so important, especially for nonprofits and any of the content that you're putting out there, whether that be social media or your website or digital campaigns, that you're really showing who you are as an organization, what your mission is, and then what the direct impact is that these donations are making on your work. And I think that kind of leads into the second one about really having a tangible or immediate impact that donors feel like they can connect to. So that's why we see so often nonprofits showing donation statistics, right? So a $100 donation will help 2 dogs that are at animal shelter, really helping these new donors that might not know as much about your cause or your work, what direct impact their dollars will make on your cause. And that goes into the third one, which is really just making it easy for donors to give. Now that you have them hooked on your mission and your cause and the impact that you can make with their donation, how easy is it for them to actually give? Can they easily find your donate button? Can it be a seamless flow as they're going through your donation? Now that you have them hooked and on your website to really cultivate and finish that donation, how easy are you making it for them to give? And what options are you giving them of how they can give and donate to your nonprofit? And I think the last, and this really intertwines with all of these options, is the tax benefits, right? So while many donors really do give because they feel passionate about their favorite causes and helping their favorite organizations, tax benefits are such an important factor into why someone might choose to give, especially when you look at non-cash assets like what we do at the Giving Block with crypto and stocks. Donors are especially motivated to give these types of assets because it means that they're not having to pay capital gains tax, the nonprofit gets more, and they get a write-off more if they're donating it as crypto or stock versus selling it and donating it in cash. So I think those are really some of the key things to think about, and will tie in nicely to some of these trends that we'll talk about when it comes to tech and how you can really tap in to some of these motivation factors with new donors.
Thanks, Bailey. I really love that last point about the tax efficiency, because it truly is not only a win for the donor because they get to do good with their donation, like more than they would have normally done with a cash donation, and the nonprofit in turn gets a bigger gift, which is amazing. So that kind of leads me to the next thing, which was, Carrie, this is something that I want to pass to you. How do you think technology can help nonprofits connect with their donors?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that last answer and how it starts really with the mission and the impact, and you want to start there as opposed to the technology. There's a saying in the tech industry to fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And this really highlights the importance of defining your objective, what you're trying to do, and then looking for ways that technology might be able to help you reach that objective. It can be really easy to get distracted by technology and lose sight of the outcome that you're driving towards. So even though we're talking about technology here, it's still the supporting actor. The hero is the use case, the problem that it's meant to address. So in the context of this question, I'd say it's important to first think through, what does it mean to connect with your donors? How do you define it, and how do you measure success? So is it simply increasing your outreach? Is it event participation? Is it overall engagement? Get really clear on what your definition is so that you understand its nuances, and then look for ways that technology can assist. The added benefit of defining the problem and success metrics up front is that you can start to experiment with new tools. And as long as you keep those success metrics in mind, you can identify what's working and what's not working, and maybe pivot and try something different. So a big part of connection comes from understanding the other person. What are their interests? What do we have in common? Do we have opportunities to work together on common goals to make the world a better place in some way? Some research from Blackbaud Institute found that 70% of donors are fine with personalized content, with most younger donors preferring it. And among the donors who prefer personalized content, their top preferences were related to communication style. So things like channels used, frequency of content, as well as engagement level. So are you talking to them about volunteer opportunities or upcoming events? But understanding your donors and personalizing your approach can be really difficult to do at scale, which is where technology can help. For example, if you have a CRM with thousands of constituents, you can use machine learning to segment your donors based on different factors. It might be based on demographic information, capacity ratings, predictions such as likelihood to give, but you can then use that segmentation to help define your engagement strategies and use communication preferences and interests to tailor your outreach to each group. Some donors might be motivated by the impact that your programs are having, while others might want to hear more about the financials and how their donation will be used, or the tax benefits, to your earlier point. If you do have a large CRM, then you can also use technology to test variations of your content. That allows you to create and review a handful of messages, and then use the feedback to determine what resonates with the different segments of donors. Now, ultimately, the technology should help get you to action faster. To truly understand and connect with your donors, there's no substitution for talking with them. So with that in mind, I think a good use of technology is to remove anything that gets in the way of that human connection. So as an example, something that my team at Blackbaud is working on, it's a new tool called Prospect Insights, which uses AI to help organizations identify, qualify, understand their best major gift prospects. And although it's driven by machine learning, it has been intentionally designed to drive action. We're now running an early adopter program to test a new version of the tool. And we're using feedback from our early adopters to help identify what data and predictions to surface in order to drive qualification decisions, and what data to surface in order to help frontline fundraisers with their outreach. So again, it's the action there that's most important. We want to serve up an experience in our CRMs that allow organizations to quickly find prospects who maybe weren't on their radar before, and ultimately reduce the time it takes to connect with a new donor. So again, I'd say first, take a step back, outline your definition for what it means to connect with donors, identify anything that gets in the way of that connection, and then look for technology that can help with each scenario that you've identified.
I love that. I also have to say too, I think because of how much tech is out there, it can sometimes feel overwhelming of figuring out what do we even tap into first? What do we figure out? So I love the idea of really figuring out first, what's your problem? What is success for you? And then figuring out what tech fits into that, because there really isn't a one size fits all of if you implement X, Y, Z, you're going to see success. It's totally different for every nonprofit. So I really, really love that about figuring out what your problem is, what does success look like for you, and then what tech can really help you get there.
Absolutely.
And I wish when I was a fundraiser, I had that. This is just going to make everything so much more efficient and effective as fundraisers to have these tools, which leads me to my next question for Mac, which is, when a nonprofit is adding new technology, what should they consider?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think a couple great points really brought up there by Carrie and Bailey, in terms of defining your objective with nonprofit technology, measuring success, iterating, things of that nature. I think that really kind of feeds into the process. I think as we take a step back, it's really an incredible time to be a nonprofit today, right? The amount of technology solutions and really purpose-built technology solutions for nonprofits, has nearly tripled since 2010, right? No longer are the days of a single ERP system allowing you to do everything you need in one place. So, as you really evaluate those objectives and those different technology systems, what are the key things that you really need to determine and evaluate? I think first and foremost, again, as Carrie said, what are the objectives? How does this technology serve us? What are the goals of this solution? What does it help us accomplish? For example, if you're going to be utilizing the giving block, perhaps it enables you to reach new audiences or gain new access to wallet share. I think then additionally, as a second part, how do you maximize this data, right? Data is a nonprofit's greatest asset. So how are you going to bring that data back into your system of record to create that 360-degree view, right? It's important to remember all the different touch points you have with supporters, donors, whomever else with your organization, right? Every gift, every email open, every event attendee, et cetera, is all an opportunity to engage supporters, right? Without a plan for integration, your data remains siloed and ineffective. Omatic works with nonprofit organizations to establish rules for integration to allow you to bring in data from any source one time to streamline that overall process going forward, right? So I think as a kind of closing loop to these steps to evaluating new technology is really kind of bringing it full circle and really measuring the performance versus those goals, and then uniquely reiterate or evaluate that. I think that also goes into kind of, again, the measuring of the success and experimenting. It's what all the greatest athletes are doing. It's the same thing that we all have to do if we want to get the best results. Just continue to iterate on those practices.
Yeah, I love that. Especially I really loved what you said about the siloing, right? Of making sure that as you're bringing in new data, that it's not just siloed in one place. And I think that's just so helpful too for nonprofits team of like, how do you really consolidate that you're seeing everything in one place? Because tech can do so much good, but if your nonprofit is then having to go to 10 different places to find and map everything, it can take more staff time. So really looking at Blackbaud, right? There's so many great tools in there for really looking at your donor insight, but then how do you really make sure all your donor information is getting in there, whether that's through crypto or stock or non-cash assets? How do you really make sure that all of that data is getting in there to really utilize the tools in a way that, works for your nonprofit?
That's great. My internet got an alert that it was unstable. I think we're good. All right. So we talked about technology. Let's talk a little. Bailey, what are you seeing with today's donors?
Yeah, so I think this is a great segue to go a little bit more into some of the tech trends that we see out there of really looking at what are new giving behaviors that we're seeing in today's donors, because I think as technology evolves, so does the way that people are wanting to give, right? So the first is really just that online and digital giving. So donors are just more and more increasing for using digital giving. It is accessible, it is convenient, and it's really just a great way to support their favorite causes in a way that suits them. So I think, Carrie, going off what you said as well, this is a really great way to really look at what are your digital communication tools and how can you really personalize your outreach to reach donors in the way that they're finding you, whether that be through social media or digital campaigns versus some of that traditional kind of in-person events. I think a second one that I really wanted to talk about here was with peer-to-peer, right? So that importance of social influence and really motivating at people to give and how they're giving through these peer-to-peer campaigns. When you see your friends or family or colleagues giving and supporting a cause, this really can motivate people to give and inspire them to want to get involved. So I think really, not underestimating the power that social media and peer-to-peer can have of really showing the power individuals have to activate entire communities. I think that community aspect is so big when it comes to giving behaviors of people really wanting to give with their community. We see that a lot, especially with crypto donors. Crypto donors all have their own unique, individual, different communities with interests and causes that they're passionate about, with their own favorite memes. So one thing that we really see for nonprofits, especially here at the Giving Block, of where they see success is when they're tapping in to what those donors' interests are, the content that they engage with, what they care about. That's really where we see the most success when it comes to cultivating these new behaviors, is looking at that factor of community. And then the last is just really having an automated and fast option. I think as we see these changes, especially looking at commerce checkout, right? So when someone is buying a new pair of shoes, they want automated and fast and easy options when they're going ahead and checking out. And we see that donors want those same options available in their giving process. So they want to have easy options, streamlined approaches, different methods of giving, really having an automated flow when it comes to now you have someone hooked on your mission. How do you get them to go ahead and complete that gift? So I think the main takeaway with all of these when it comes to kind of new giving methods is that donors are really embracing technology. And so for nonprofits, it's really important to understand what are those trends and kind of techs that these donors really want, and how can you meet their expectations to really engage with them and bring in some new donors from there.
Yeah, I'm happy to layer in a little bit here quickly. I think that, through the pandemic and shutting down of events and moving into quarantine and things of that nature, it really opened the doors to so many different opportunities to really meet audiences where they are, right? I think as we got away from events and some of the more traditional giving opportunities, it really created a path to have these new connections and find new donors and connect with these younger generations or older in certain capacities as well. So really think it's a unique opportunity where we are today. And I think it's really important to consider the different multitudes and channels to access these different groups and pulling it all together to make sure you have all of that back in your system of record so you can get the right message to the right person at the right time.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think too, when you add on these new methods, also letting your donors know that they're available. I mean, this is something we especially see around non-cash assets, but if you're adding things like crypto or stock or donor advised funds, letting your audience really know and want them to engage with these new methods is so important. And so, I think we've already talked about that a little bit, but how do you really help your donors tap into that, of including it in your SEO or sharing on social with hashtags, of really not only engaging current donors, but bringing in those new ones that are looking for ways to give through those methods. So I think we might have lost Carly for some internet issues. So I have the questions up here. So I'll pass it over to you, Carrie, kind of for this next one, which I think really ties in nicely to what we were just talking about, of with these kind of new giving behaviors that we see, what kind of emerging trends and technology do you think can really help nonprofits tap into today's donors?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes back to understanding your donor preferences. And as you were both talking through that last question, I was also thinking through, is there an opportunity to sort of co-create or experiment with donors, especially if some are more of those early adopters who are willing to try new things or test out new technology. There's a ton of excitement and hype right now around artificial intelligence. And while AI itself isn't an emerging technology, there have been recent advances that have made it more powerful and more accessible. So really, OpenAI released the first version of GPT back in 2018. Since then, newer versions have been released with more computing power. They've been trained on larger and larger data sets, but before November of 2022, you still had to use an API to play with the large language model. So I think what was incredible about ChatGPT is actually just the fact that it makes AI more accessible, because it's a simple user interface where you can now type in a prompt and receive a response. So again, technology and AI are just tools that help you when you're considering how to address a specific problem, like connecting with donors at scale. But to understand how a specific tool might fit in with your workflows, you need a basic understanding of the tool itself. What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? So I want to talk a little bit at a high level about AI in that context. At their core, AI and predictions are used to reduce uncertainty. A prediction tells you the probability that something will happen. It's never 100% accurate, but strong predictions will reduce that uncertainty and help you determine the best action to take. Even generative AI and tools like ChatGPT, Bard, they're still predictions. Given a prompt, they predict the next word or phrase most likely to come next. So Think about your current workflows related to connecting with your donors and identify areas of uncertainty as potential opportunities to use artificial intelligence. An example of an area of uncertainty would be, who should I reach out to next? Which donors in my CRM are most likely to give a gift in the next 12 months? Which donors are most likely to be interested in an upcoming campaign? Which are most likely to give through cryptocurrency or some of these other methods? What messaging is most likely to resonate with my donors? And then as you're thinking about use cases and identifying areas of uncertainty, you should also look at internal processes, not just donor-facing ones. Internal processes can be a great starting point for testing new tools like generative AI, because they allow you to kind of pressure test before exploring public-facing scenarios. So a couple of example use cases that I've seen, at least that go beyond writing the first draft of a document or communication. One is related to brainstorming. So because it does really well at scale, and in brainstorming, you want to come up with as many ideas as possible before you edit them down, you could use a prompt like, provide 50 ideas for a marketing campaign that highlights our programs and our impact in the community. And that in turn can help you come up with new ideas that maybe you wouldn't have considered before, or you just get to them faster because now you have 50 to start from. Another use case is related to planning. You can use tools like ChatGPT to put together an agenda or to break down a complicated objective into smaller milestones and tasks. So before this call, I was playing around with ChatGPT and I put in a hypothetical prompt. I said, I work for a nonprofit organization. We're planning our first capital campaign with a goal of raising $5 million in 5 years. Create a schedule that helps us prepare for and launch this campaign, include deliverables, things to consider, and any red flags to watch for. And it did. It gave me a really long list of to-dos and things to consider, broken up into stages: pre-campaign planning, campaign design, a quiet phase, public phase. One of the key benefits of these large language models and this new UI is that it's able to keep a lot of context in memory. So you can continue to refine your prompts or ask follow-up questions using that conversational interface. You can ask it to expand on certain suggestions or make updates based on different prompts. So explain our mission as if I were 5 years old. Explain our mission as if I'm the CEO of a major corporation. Now, to be clear, this isn't going to be a substitute for an expert. My simplistic example around campaign planning, it's an example of how it can be used as a starting place. But I think more importantly, it's important to test a hypothetical scenario in an area where you do have expertise, because that helps you figure out what the tool can and can't do. You're minimizing risk because you're providing hypothetical information, and you'll start to figure out what it's good at and areas where it might struggle. Make sure that you read the terms of service before using any tool. ChatGPT is a research tool, and you don't want to include any confidential information in your prompts. But if you start with internal use cases or with fake data, you'll quickly start to get a better understanding of the tool, which in turn will help you identify ways that it could help with your processes and your mission, which you're the expert on.
I love those examples. I think it's so helpful to just see really tangible ways that nonprofits can use it, because I think we see it everywhere of the ways that it's be doing now. But as a nonprofit, you're like, well, how does this fit into my work or my fundraising or whatnot? And so I especially love your suggestion of just like testing it out, just playing with a little bit to see what you can put in, the more specific you are, what it puts out. I think those are some just super tangible tips that anyone on here can kind of take away of just, you don't have to be an expert in it to try it out. And I think, like you said, too, the more you try it out, even with kind of test or fake prompts, you can kind of see what it'll output. And I think the more you use it, the more you might think of potential ways to use it as a nonprofit too.
Yeah, there was a survey that came out recently from the Pew Research Center, and they found that although 58% of US adults have heard of ChatGPT, only 14% have actually tried it. given how much hype there is and how many people you see posting about it, I would have expected that number to be a lot higher. But if you can find low risk scenarios where you're just trying it out, again, you all are the experts on your workflows and your mission, and you know your organizations. And so you'll quickly start to figure out where it could potentially fit in.
Yeah. And I think it can even be a starting point, right? It's like you don't have to use exactly what they're outputting, but it can be a helpful starting point of even just brainstorming, of thinking, where can we go from here? What are some new ideas, and kind of moving forward that way. Love it.
That's amazing. Happy to be back. I think that ChatGPT is a game changer, not just for nonprofits, but just for your everyday life. So we're really lucky to have that technology. Next question, I'm going to pass over to Mac. I would love to know, how does having an integration and a data management strategy play a role within fundraising?
Yeah, absolutely. Before kind of jumping into this one, want to set the stage with a little bit of data. At Omatic, we work with over 3,000 nonprofit organizations. We frequently run surveys to understand what tools they're using, with what frequency, and just try and share that data as we have more conversations. So love being able to bring that full circle and share that here. So in some of our recent findings, 80% of organizations have 4 or more systems in addition to their system of record. 50% have 6 or more systems in addition to their system of record. Right? There's more choices in terms of technology solutions than there ever have been. And it's wonderful. As mentioned before, they're really a lot of purpose built for nonprofit data integrations, nonprofit solutions, right? I think we're seeing more and more of that as time has gone on. The past 15 years have been really incredible at catching up the nonprofit industry. I think another stat that we pulled from a recent survey is that along with those large amount of technology systems and data sources, there's also 76% of organizations who say that they need a data management strategy. So I think first and foremost, what is data management strategy? Well, according to SAP, a data management strategy is the practice of collecting, organizing, and accessing data to support productivity, efficiency, and decision-making. Data integration is really focused on the collecting and organizing of that data, right? To create a unified view, or a 360-degree view, as people typically refer to it, most commonly in your system of record. So if you don't have a data management strategy, it's going to become increasingly difficult over time to maintain control of that data and to add systems and really get the most of that data. So with establishing a data management strategy, as you successfully implement a data management and integration strategy, it allows you to drive consistency in the way that data is coming into your system of record, right? Really set up your business rules or best practices one time upfront, determine where you want that data to map, how you want to transform that data, what are your business rules for how you want to prevent duplicates, and just make sure that the rules that you set forth up front are going to essentially be the foundation for how that data is going to come in the future from any different source. Part of the goal with the data management strategy and integration is really increase the time to value of your data, right? Also reduce friction in change management. As you want to add new systems, you can do that with more confidence if you know that no matter what systems you go ahead and add, there's a reliable way to integrate that data if you have a data management strategy, right? The goal there really becomes setting a streamlined process, employ technology to do the work so that you can, reallocate resources towards doing, the work that you'd prefer to be doing. Those things that are really going to help focus on mission impact and setting your organization forward, as opposed to manual data entry, cleanup, deduplication, things of that nature, right? That way, if you can bring all the data in a streamlined process and really a timely fashion, knowing that data is coming in clean the first time, it allows you to get the right message to the right person at the right time and really create the best donor engagement possible.
I love that. One thing I was just thinking of, Mac, when you were saying that too, let's say I'm a nonprofit that's on this call and we have no data management strategy right now. We kind of just have all of our platforms working on their own. What's like the first tangible thing that you would say for a nonprofit to do to get started? Is it kind of like evaluating and looking at all your tech that you have out there and just doing an inventory kind of? I'm just curious, especially with all that you do at Omatic around this, what's kind of like one thing that someone could do today if they're on this call and are like, I have no data management strategy, what can I do to start this process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think evaluating the data you have, evaluating the sources and understanding what importance that they drive, how do they help move your organization forward and enhance mission impact, right? And then I think getting a grasp of those systems and kind of having your rules or your basic understanding of the data architecture you want to set within your system of record is very important. With that sort of foundation of where you want the data, which data you want to bring into your system of record, and where you want that to live in your system of record, that's essentially the foundation of what you can work around with a data management strategy. With that, then simply you can start with something like a flat file integration solution, right? And this flat file, what's really nice about it is generally it's one cost for a subscription, and it allows you to integrate data from literally any source that can produce an output file and bring that data into your system of record in a streamlined fashion.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I'm sure when people start doing the inventory too, they might realize they have more tech out there than they realize, right? Your CRM, maybe your financial systems, maybe if you're using the Giving Block for non-cash assets, like employee matching, right? And so totally. I think I love the idea of doing an inventory, especially if you have different people at your nonprofit that are working on different tech, of just having one place that you can see everything, because having that streamlined process will not only save you so much time, but I think, like you said earlier, it really helps avoid that data silo of having data in all these different areas that aren't talking to each other. And you can then really make the most of all of these tools that you're using, whether it be all of the great insight at Blackbaud or, figuring out how to make all of these talk to each other. I really love that.
Yeah. And just to layer on what you said there, I think the idea of really having everything in one place, both in terms of the 360-degree view, but also, as a kind of consolidated point of ingestion for all of your data coming in from these different sources, really makes things a much more tangible approach and allows people to manage an ongoing integration in a very seamless manner, which is going to really take very little time of someone's day-to-day as opposed to becoming a full-time job.
Yeah. And not only for staff time, but really helping engaging those donors as well. Like, just as we were talking earlier about community and how there's all these different segmented donor communities, how can you really tap into those in the best way of using all of these techs for each other? So I love it.
Great. So let's leave our nonprofits with some key takeaways. So Bailey, let's go ahead and start with you. And if you can just talk a little bit about some new giving trends that we've been seeing and tech. Let's go ahead and start there with you.
Yeah, this is a hard one because we've talked about so much good content during this, but I would say for nonprofits, really the biggest thing to take away from this is just note, I think we've talked a lot about different trends out there and there's a ton of options, but just know that not every piece of technology or trend is going to be a good fit for your organization, and that's okay. The most important thing is to really be open to exploring and embracing new technology. And I think it goes back to what Carrie said of like, what really is your problem? How can you find tech to solve it? And what's success for you? So really, when you're looking at this new tech, assessing how does this align with our goals? How can it really help position us to be successful? And really knowing that the digital philanthropy landscape, I think, is always changing and donors are changing. And I think the other thing with this is that you don't have to be an expert in the technology in order to utilize this. We say this all the time with the nonprofits we work with, especially around crypto, is that you do not have to be an expert in crypto in order to fundraise it. I think the same goes for AI, right? You don't have to be an expert in ChatGPT to try it out, but really just be open to exploring and embracing these new trends are out there, because they really can be an awesome opportunity to not only attract new donors, retain your current ones, but really optimize your fundraising efforts and the work that you're doing. So I will pass it off to Carrie. You want to go next?
Sure. I think I can kind of piggyback off what you were saying. So you mentioned the philanthropic landscape is always changing. I was going to say the technology landscape is always changing and evolving. So again, like you were saying, when you're evaluating technology solutions, keep your focus on your mission and the problems you're trying to solve. It's really easy to get into the shiny object syndrome where you see the shiny new toy or there's so much hype happening right now. But again, it's trying to find low risk ways where you can start testing out these tools. You are the experts on your mission and your organization. And so if you just start to play around with some of these tools and you give hypothetical scenarios, you'll very quickly identify areas where they struggle and maybe you can't use them, but also areas where they could add value to your work and support your mission. So I think a lot of it comes back to having just a sense of curiosity and not necessarily trying out new tools because you're worried about, oh, I'm going to fall behind, or everyone's using AI, and so how do I use AI or crypto or other new technology that'll probably be coming in the next months or years. It's always going to be changing, but instead coming to it with a sense of, oh, I wonder what this can do. And that curiosity, I think, goes a long way in the long term.
Yeah, agreed on all fronts there. I think you both mentioned, the tech landscape is evolving and changing. Couldn't agree more. Have that in my notes as well. I really think that as part of that, right, I think that it's really important to future-proof your organization with a data management strategy, right? Because that way, you know that no matter where you go in terms of the different sources of data you're going to utilize, adding the giving block, for example, and bringing that data into Blackbaud, it's going to be a streamlined process, right? So you want to make sure that you can reduce friction in change management, get the most out of your data, and be set up for long-term success with a reliable data management strategy.
Absolutely. That's so important. So I have a question for the three of you. So knowing that, nonprofits want to embrace this new technology, but there's also going to be that traditional side of fundraising, like having a cup of coffee with your donor, and you kind of have those two different pillars sometimes for strategies, like older donors, younger donors. But how do you strike the balance between embracing the new technologies while maintaining the traditional methods, which are still preferred by, again, certain segment of donors?
So I'll jump in first. I think that it all goes back to what is your North Star metric and keeping that top of mind and figuring out what works. And you want to continue to experiment and try new things, but that doesn't mean completely uprooting existing workflows and throwing everything out. It's rarely black and white. There's going to be, okay, this works well in this scenario, this works well in another. And so that's, again, coming back to, can you do some segmentation on your donors and really figure out what resonates with certain people? This group of individuals love the face-to-face and are not interested in an AI-generated communication from us, but others might think that AI is so cool and they would love to receive that communication from us. But it's really that understanding and coming back again to what helps us move closer to our goal, what helps drive our mission forward, and keeping that front and center.
And I think just that word balance is so key, right? Whenever you're adding new technology, doesn't mean, like you said, Carrie, someone has to uproot completely their old methods that they were using, especially if it's something that's working. I think especially when thinking about this new tech, it's not only a way to continue to engage your current donors, but also engage some new donors as well. So looking at what types of new donors do we want to bring in? Maybe we are looking for younger donors or a certain community of donors or some peer-to-peer fundraising, really looking at where those missing holes are and how you can fill that with some new donors. And so I think balance is really the key word here of when you're adding these new technologies, of really experimenting with them and see how they might also fit into what you're already doing, right? So for example, when you're adding crypto, you probably already have maybe a social media account, Twitter, SEO. How do you just incorporate that into what you're doing to really let donors know that you have this new option available? So I think it doesn't mean when you add a new kind of tech, you have to completely throw away everything that you were doing before. It really can be, how do we enhance what we're already doing and use this to really not only further cultivate our existing donors, but really bring in those new ones as well that might not know about our organization if it weren't for some of these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to quickly layer there, I think, over the past 15 years in the evolution of technology and where we are today, I mean, best of breed technology brings a lot of incredible opportunities, right? Carrie mentioned the importance of experimenting with new technologies. And, I think that we have many opportunities to do that. And it really makes sense to, again, really reach new audiences where they are. You especially as you talk about younger generations, Gen Z, millennials, it's important to understand who your audiences are. And provide points of reference that are relevant to them and, connect with them on their turf so that you can essentially create those opportunities to, have greater mission impact while serving your core audience, but also pushing the limits in new directions and experimenting where you may have other future potential growth.
Yeah, I think that's really important. That's like a really big part of that donor-centric fundraising is like meeting those donors where they're at. So speaking about that a little bit, how would you all suggest for nonprofits to effectively communicate the adoption of these new technologies? Just like crypto donations and things like that. Do you have any like tips or tricks? Because I feel like I get that question a lot from nonprofits too.
I can go on it, at least from the crypto and non-cash asset side. The biggest thing is just really letting people know that you accept this new form of donations, especially with crypto. A really great comparison that I've heard when it comes to crypto is, let's say you had the option to put a major gift button on your website, but then you never promoted it, never shared with anyone that it was there. You might not see a lot of huge gifts come through. And so crypto is very similar. Once you start accepting it or add these tools, you have to really let donors know that it's an option. So for example, sharing on Twitter or Discord that you're accepting crypto, using hashtags to really let these new donors find you and know that you're accepting crypto. One really interesting thing about crypto donors is, especially for younger donors, first-time donors, they might look first of what organizations even accept crypto and then choose to give from there. So by really promoting and sharing what you're accepting, that's a great way to bring in new donors, add it to your SEO, your newsletters, really just let people know that it's an option there versus kind of just adding it and expecting it to come. And that's one other great thing to think about when you're adding new technology is, what kind of tools and resources do these platforms have that can really help you utilize them in the best way possible? I think that's something that I really love about what we do at the Giving Block, is just having that education for nonprofits on how do you reach these new donors. And I think the same with Omatic and Blackbaud is you guys just have such great educational tools of how nonprofits can really use the tech in the best way to have their maximum impact there. So I don't know if either of you want to add anything onto that.
Something from the AI perspective to consider, especially as you talk about like responsible AI, human-centered AI, ethics with data and artificial intelligence. I think that transparency is very important. So again, we're in this newer phase with generative AI where people are testing things out and experimenting and figuring out what works, what doesn't work. And I think that there's an opportunity to ask donors what their thoughts on it, what are their comfort levels with AI, and would they, again, if there are any early adopters within the donor base, would they be willing to test the AI with you? I think there might be some individuals who think that's really cool and innovative, and others, maybe their comfort level isn't as high, but it all comes back to that understanding. And like we've said a couple times today, meeting your donors where they are.
Yep, absolutely. So important in this landscape. All right, well, I do see we have one question that came in about AI. So if anyone else has questions, please put them into the Q&A. So we have Melissa asking, Carrie, I think this one would be for you. Is there a list of best AI tools that you recommend nonprofits to use in their development campaigns?
So I think that it'll come back to what do you want to use the AI for? What are the problems that you're trying to solve with it? If it's things related to campaign planning, again, even a really basic prompt in ChatGPT kind of helped get things started. If you're looking for help crafting communications, it can be helpful as a starting place. There are more generative AI specific tools like Dolly, Midjourney that help with visuals in particular. If you're looking for, I need help understanding our donor base or creating segmentations within our CRM, we offer different predictions, different analytics offerings that can help with prioritizing the donors within your CRM. So I know that's not a specific answer, but I think that a lot of it will come down to what specific piece within that campaign or within any process are you trying to solve for, and then looking for different tools that could potentially tie into it.
Right. Any other questions? Oh, we got one from Stephen. Are there any resources or videos we can share with our clients regarding the Giving Block and crypto donations? Speaking as a Blackbaud rep with clients that have interest on crypto donations, I understand Omatic would bridge that connection. I can go ahead and answer that one. Yes, absolutely. Stephen, maybe we can connect on the side and just chat about the resources that we can share with you, because we would love for you to educate all the nonprofits that you work with the benefits of working with the Giving Block.
And just to go off that question as well about the kind of how the data gets over. So we do use Omatic as our connector to Blackbaud, which is amazing. So any client that's using the Giving Block can essentially use Omatic as their connector to seamlessly get all of their crypto, stock, donor advised fund, gift information over to Blackbaud. And what's really great about Omatic is they help with all the mapping, make sure everything's getting in the right place. And then you can actually go into Blackbaud and use all of their great tools and insights for everything you might want to use with these donors, like segmenting them, specific communication, all of that good stuff. So we'll have a follow-up email on this as well, but we have a ton of integrations with the Giving Block of really making sure, kind of like what we talked about today, that none of that information is siloed, and you can really make sure that you're making the most of all of your new donors that you're bringing in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to layer on that really quickly, just in terms of that same solution that Omatic would be providing, or is an investment opportunity for organizations to bring data into Blackbaud. That same flat file integration solution can be utilized for flat files from any source. So a number of you likely already have Import Omatic today. You can utilize that solution to bring in your data from the Giving Block into Blackbaud.
Awesome. And I think I see a question about an outline of the conversation. So after this, we will send a recording of the webinar, so you can go ahead and share that with anyone else in your team that you might think will find helpful. And then we have some really great resources from all three of our organizations on kind of what we talked about today and some other takeaways that we'll send in a follow-up. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. Carly, do you want to do the poll that we have to wrap things up?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for joining. I hope you all found it extremely insightful. I certainly did. I am going to launch a poll here. So if you are interested in getting in touch with any of us, please let us know. And like Bailey said, remember, we will be sending this out to you within the next couple days. Please share. And again, want to thank so much to Carrie and Mac representing Blackbaud and Omatic. Such a great conversation. Looking forward to continue these in the future. I'm sure everyone learned a lot. it looks like we have quite a bit of people who want to get in touch, so that's great. Someone want to say something else, Bailey? No? Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to thank everyone again, and we look forward to being in touch with those of you who want to be in touch. And please look out for the recording. Everyone enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.